So yeah, man, you were saying the situation that happened not too far from you, man. You guys had a tough week, I heard out there.
Real tough week, real tough week, and a little research. Uh, I started through a little research. I started seeing this thing made nationwide news.
Mm,
People all over the country. Discussing the shooting that happened at Mansfield Timberview High School.
wow.
Not even 15 minutes from where I live. Not even 5 minutes from where you used to live.
Hey, and the ironic thing is, man, my kids attended Mansfield School District, where that school is located, and so when my kids started getting word from some of their friends back in Texas, I was like, no, man, that ain't happening. That ain't happening no Mansfield ISD. But that just goes to show, man, that the effects of bullying, the effects of people oppressing and hurting other people. I don't care how insulated a community is based on the income, the outcome is going to be the same if it was in a place where it was poverty.
Right,
You know.
right. And it's almost like a culture thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like the cultures are blended now.
Mm.
Middle class, some of the lower classes and the middle classes, they become blended through the cultures.
Mm.
And Mansfield Timberview was kind of like middle class. Let's kind of escape the inner city of Fort Worth. Let's escape the inner cities of Dallas and Arlington, and let's
Mm-hmm.
escape to this new area out here
Yeah.
where all the houses are $400,000 and $500,000,
Mm-hmm.
and let's have a place of solace.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine what the parents are feeling this week with hearing that news on Twitter.
Yeah.
I mean, hearing that somebody is shot
Yeah.
at school,
Yeah.
and then the one thing from my experiences dealing with any situation in school when it
Yeah.
comes to behavior,
Yeah.
every situation that happens in a school has to be investigated, like heavily investigated. When I was an administrator in an elementary school,
Yeah.
and I was an administrator in secondary. Totally different experience. Elementary, you're dealing with behavior. Somebody's angry, maybe a little tussle, different levels of antisocial behavior that will lead a student to come to the administrator's office. But when you have situations in middle school, in high school, but definitely middle school, you have to investigate fully, like a police officer,
Yeah.
where you're calling in witnesses, you're looking at students as you're investigating them to make sure they're not, you
Wow.
know, giving up, making sure that it's that deep. There's so
Wow.
many layers to antisocial behavior, man, when you come to secondary. So, and I say that to mean we're looking at the guy and they say, okay, he shot somebody. He shot somebody. He needs to be dealt with. He needs to be
Mhm.
put in jail. But I didn't realize it until yesterday. I'm watching actually a YouTube live. Now, I didn't watch the news, but through
Mhm.
watching a YouTube live, I started gathering other data that stated that the boy had been getting bullied.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
The
that's
boy who
what.
did the shooting was getting bullied.
Yeah. That's what we heard too. My daughter and my son through both of their networks of friends, they immediately said that kid had been beat up, robbed, and humiliated in front of a group of kids at school. And yeah, I mean that's high school. I mean when people are doing that at that level, that's like being out on the streets in public, being humiliated. And how many people are going to take that type of treatment and go home, right?
Right.
So my question though, Dr. J, is who creates a climate? And again, I'm not looking for the principals to be the cheerleaders of all the campuses, but I'm saying that there's got to be some adults, right? There's got to be some folks that these kids, even at the high school level, can go to and feel like, hey, I'm a part of at least this person's village or that person's village, and I got something going on. And you know what? Let me share it with them and see if I can get some support from this adult. Because I'm thinking, man, an environment like that where this kid just felt like, look, man, the only way I'm going to be able to handle this is that I'm going to have to do something to somebody, means that he didn't have an intermediate that he could go to on that campus. I don't believe, because I'm a former educator. You're a former educator. And we've had tons of conversations about, us, being available to children outside of the curriculum, because many days as an educator, and I see my niece has joined in and my nephew both have joined in. Thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Chris, for joining us. That being a young person and having somebody on campus is almost a requirement. And I think you did some research and you were looking at, when kids feel connected to a campus, right? I think the outcomes are different.
All the way different. When you look at the research, that's why, I mean, and schools typically try to follow, I mean, because schools do have a wide array of social activities for students to get involved in. Because once I got to secondary, one thing I started seeing was my students who were the most troubled, they weren't athletes.
Mm.
The students who were causing the fights, the students who were bringing weed on campus, the students who were jumping other students off campus when they're walking home, those students typically they weren't athletes.
Mm-hmm.
And you can bring an array of students in through the athletic portion of school, because you have coaches, you have so many different levels of more people that can come in and that can build those direct relationships with those students.
Yeah.
And so typically the students who may be, and when you're dealing with in school and when you're dealing with football players, basketball players, if an administrator is having a problem with a basketball player or a football player, they're not going to call the mama first. They're not going to call anybody first. They're going to say, hey, coach, I got your basketball player in here.
Exactly.
Hey, coach, I got your football player in here.
Yep.
And I don't even have to deal with it anymore. Coach comes in, sweeps it up. Coach can talk to them in ways and manners that I can't talk to them in.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's showing you just a strong relationship, the strong connection to the school. And then the main thing that I talk to you about, people talk about grit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And people think grit is just not giving up.
Right.
That is just 50% of it. That's just half of it.
Mm.
Grit is not just not giving up. And grit is a psychological terminology that was created by a researcher named Angela Duckworth.
Okay.
Back in 2007. And through the research that she created, they stated that grit is a combination of two things. It's a combination of perseverance, not giving up, knowing how to work through a difficult situation. And the second part of grit is passion.
Mm.
So grit has to be tied to your perseverance, you're not giving up, but it also has to be tied to something that you love.
Mm.
And if I don't have it tied to something that I love in the future, like I'm gonna keep going through this class because I want to get an A so I can have a high GPA. Or I'm going to keep going through this class because my mom is going to pay me $200 if I get an A.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to pass this class because it's needed for future, admittance into a college.
Yeah.
But if the student doesn't have that passion, I'm going to persevere. But if I'm persevering, we all know, they say if you just lean on perseverance, you're going to end up burning out sooner or later.
Wow.
You're going to end up burning out. So we can't just tell students, hey man, be tough.
Right.
Get your mind right.
Yeah.
Do it. Do it for your mama. Do it for your daddy. No. We got to tie this to something that you love.
Mm. So Courtney, I mean, Dr. J, that makes me think about another question. Educators that I know still say that they don't have enough time, man, to really find out everybody's passion. And the way I respond back to them is the way that I did even when, back in the 90s when I came into the classroom. Even if I can't find the passion of all 30 of my homeroom kids, Courtney, I was intentionally going to identify some kids that needed something. They were constantly in trouble, or they were on the list of, if they got in trouble one more time, they were going to be sent to the alternative program. And so those would be the kids that I would put like on a hot list, and I would say, hey, I got to check on these kids. In addition to doing my daily job of teaching the content, I also had to intentionally lean in, right? And try to understand what are the challenges for this child. And I built some great relationships. I mean, some kids that I still follow, and they follow me, and we still are in touch, to this day, some 20 some years later. But but educators can't find every child's passion. I mean, how do we help them overcome that? I mean, what's missing out of K-12, where kids are missing that contact with teachers on that level?
Fred, I'm gonna be honest with you, man. A lot of the autonomy has been taken away from teachers. Teachers, when you're a new teacher and you're coming in, there's so many systems. We've been there as new teachers. There's so many things to learn, so many systems. How do I get into my email? How do I get into the curriculum? Who are the new teachers? Look at all these new books I have to learn and understand so I can communicate those points to students. Teachers have to learn so much when they're first starting out and these are systems that they're having to learn. Systems of learning, systems of how to submit my lesson plan, systems of how to submit a referral, systems of how to communicate with parents. Teachers are having to submit grades online. So I'm having to do grades online. I'm having to grade your paper grade, then put your grade online. Then I got to have 2 grades per week submitted every week. I have to grade all these assignments. So teachers are kind of pulled in a lot of different ways. Then they have to pull small groups. And I'm pulling small groups based on who's doing good, hopefully, that day. And then, I have a tutoring group after school. Teachers juggle so much. They juggle so much. They almost remind me like of an assistant coach in like the NFL. You're just doing so much, trying to just hang on. And when you asking them to do something organic and something natural, the system is not asking them to do anything natural.
Wow.
You're looking at your lesson plans, you're looking at a curriculum, looking at these books you have, and it's all kind of done for you. Teachers don't use any originality. Teaching is an art, period. Art means individualistic. It means we can both draw a picture of the sun. Your picture of the sun is going to look different than my picture of the sun. Our perceptions are different, but they're both pictures of the sun. And some teachers have the autonomy and some teachers don't. And because of all these different systems they have to memorize and keep up with, when it comes to, okay, now, hey, I need you to build a genuine relationship with all 30 of these students that's in your class. Or if you're in secondary, you might have 80 to 100 students. I need you to build a genuine relationship with 100 each of your students. Now, teachers aren't typically taught to do that. They're not explicitly told to do that. They're told to keep up with all these different systems they're keeping up with.
Wow.
Once a day, you have an administrator walking in your room, doing a walkthrough, observing you. And if you have an adult observing you, you want to be on your game. You want to be doing what you're supposed to do. So all I'm saying is they're getting pulled so many different ways when it comes to doing the regular and the natural stuff that it gets overlooked. Because they're thinking, okay, lesson plan box, check. Everybody's behavior is well, check. Everybody's paying attention to me, check. Everybody's here, check. Everybody is feeling good. Nobody's not hungry. Nobody's not hurt, check. So they have to go through all these different mental boxes, man. before they can get to the point where they can have the opportunity to build a relationship with a student.
Wow.
And friend, I'm gonna leave you with this one. I don't want to overtalk it.
Yeah.
But one piece of data that I observed
Mm-hmm.
that was troubling, especially when I got to secondary,
Yeah.
a student can be in school all day long and not have one conversation with an adult.
How is that possible, man? I mean, is it that they so connected on their phones and the conversation is through the phones? I mean, they texting each other, but come on, man. I mean, adults are not talking to kids. Kids are not talking to adults.
I'm not saying that they're not talking, but I'm just telling you what I've seen.
Yeah,
A quiet student
yeah.
who's not outgoing, who's not an extrovert, man, they can go a whole day. They can go to 7 classes: math, reading, science, art, music, PE, lunch, and not have one conversation with an adult. They'll talk to
What?
kids,
Okay.
but not a one-on-one conversation with an adult.
Wow. Wow.
Because think about it. First period math, you walk in, the student walks in, it's 30 students in there.
Yeah.
The teacher's trying to, do hall duty at the same time.
Mm.
The bell
Mm-hmm.
rings, the teacher walks into the room, they're getting started. Now, what are we taught to do as educators? You want to tell your teachers, stand at your door
Yeah.
and greet your students
Yeah. Yeah.
and read them.
Yeah.
And I know some of the engaging videos you've seen, maybe on YouTube or Instagram or LinkedIn, you've seen the teachers that are kind of high-fiving, the students, and everybody has their little. I don't know if you've seen that with the teacher. He had a special
Yeah.
handshake he did
Yeah.
for the
Yeah.
student.
Yeah. 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 I saw that one.
But that's one of the key. It's a lot of organic reasons, man. But that's one of the main reasons that a teacher can do is to stand at that door and read your students. Because if they're not having a bad day, it doesn't take long to figure that out.
Man, I mean, you're absolutely right. I think one of the things that I used to get excited about was when I closed that door and I got ready to do my, to call my roll. Um, if somebody was absent, it was almost instantaneously that they would tell. I mean, the kids would tell me why another kid is absent. So it was almost like the village, you know what I'm saying? We had like a small village, a small family in our class where they weren't afraid to tell me, oh, Mr. Bridges, they got put out last night, so they living with his grandmama. He ain't gonna be at school until they find another place. I mean, that type of intimate transparency. I mean, my kids were not afraid to share that. So right then and there, guess what that did in my head? Man, I need to go let the counselors know such and such is going on. And again, I know that I've got a subject that I got to teach, and so I taught the subject. But as soon as my planning period came up, guess where I went to? I went straight down to the counselor to let them know that, hey, this situation with this child may be one where they are homeless. Can we reach out and get a social worker or somebody? You know, um, and even with a kid that would come in, Dr. J, man, and like keep their head down. I walk around my classroom, bro. If a kid had his head down, even when he said, I'm here, and it sounded like it was bouncing off his desk because his head was muffled, I'm walking up to him like, hey, are you okay? Are you straight? Do you need a minute? Do you need to, step outside and talk? But you have to be intentional, like you said, man. Do you care enough to resolve those issues when you look at those students as real people instead of just student count so that the school and the district can get their money? I believe that we have to look at children as those are our customers. We're selling education. We owe them. If they're coming in to sit in that seat, we owe them to check on them, man. We owe them to, if we see a tear rolling down their face in the middle of a lesson, we owe them to, you know what? When I get to a break in this lesson, I'm walking back there to say, hey, are you all right? What's going on? You want to talk? But the teacher college didn't teach me that, man. It was what I was feeling as a human being, looking at another young human being suffering. You can't tell me that that little boy in Mansfield didn't have no signs of showing that, hey, it's some dudes after me. You come in class, your hair all over your head, your shirt ripped off, your cheek bloody, your son. You can't tell me that in the building that size with that many adults, somebody didn't see something.
Fred, you wouldn't. I'm not gonna. Here's what I experienced as, and if I wasn't an administrator, I wouldn't even be able to tell you these things. There are a school has a subculture, especially secondary schools, and that subculture involves whatever they're doing, whether it's just being honest, sex, drugs, stealing, or I mean, it's just a. And when I was an administrator in a middle class neighborhood, $200,000 homes, and I'm just telling you the subculture I saw, and the subculture is the culture that happens away from school that falls onto the campus.
Okay.
Here's one of the things that was difficult, man. The part of the subculture that I do not like, and the part of the subculture I used to attack, was being a snitch. Being perceived as a snitch, man, that is strong energy.
Okay.
Being perceived as a snitch amongst your peers, oh, you went told? Students, they get like that, like the gangster movies. Oh, you went told, you a snitch. And
Wow.
word gets around, he's a snitch, he's a snitch. Oh, you a snitch, oh, you a snitch. I ain't no snitch. So students don't, so for a lot of students, the perception of how people perceive them, that was most important to them. That was more important than grades. That was more important than anything, was how people perceived them. They wanted to be cool. They wanted to be on the in crowd. And what I'm telling you is, the mom said the boy was getting bullied. The mom knew, supposedly, but how come the school didn't know? The school didn't know. You could say the school didn't reach out, but I know as well, it's not cool to be a snitch. It's not cool to be perceived as a snitch. Just like it is in the gangster movies, the kids and the students bring that same culture. It manifests at school. Here's what I did as an administrator. I used to tell students. No, here's the first thing I did. I used to tell everybody this. I started having problems when I became an administrator in secondary. Totally different problems from the previous year when I was an elementary guy. In elementary guy, I'm dealing with direct problems. The teacher's telling me they have a problem. I go and I find it and I deal with it. Bring you to my office, counselor, in-school suspension, out-school suspension, or whatever. You get to middle school, man, you're dealing with students that are skipping. You're dealing with some students that are, in the bathroom trying to run from you. You're just dealing with a subculture and things that you have to investigate.
Yeah, you mentioned that earlier. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, totally different level. And because that dude didn't want to be perceived as a snitch, he's not going to go tell the counselor. He's not going to go tell the assistant principal. But here's what I used to tell my students. I said, look, if you have a problem, you better come find me, period. Because I started having parents that would come to school saying they'd be irate. Man, somebody's bothering my baby. They'd be in the office. Man, somebody's bothering my baby. Somebody's bothering my baby. And the secretary was like saying, hey, man, you can't come up in here. You can't just barge your way into school. We got security. You can't just do that. They come to my office irate. I'm like, hey, what's going on? Somebody's bothering my baby. I'm like, man, how do you know what's going on? I haven't heard anything. My baby just texted me that somebody's bullying them. So the student went over, the sister, they didn't think about nobody else. They texted like, man, let me text my mama.
Yeah.
Because I don't feel safe. I didn't like that. I didn't like a parent coming to my school telling me what's going on in my school.
Yeah.
I need to be telling you what's going on in my school.
Yeah.
And instead of you telling me, and then you mad because I'm not doing my job.
Yeah.
So here's what I did. I said, look, whenever I was on the microphone, whenever I was doing announcements, whenever I was talking to the entire school, I said, look, if you have a problem, you better come find me, period.
Yeah.
I don't care who it's with. I don't care if it's off campus. I don't care where it is. If you have a problem, you better come find me, period.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Let me let you out. Here's what happened. The next time that parent came, I rate the school, Fred. Somebody's bothering my baby. Somebody's bothering my baby. Okay, man, come on in. Let me get your baby. All right, baby, come on in. Everybody's in my office. I'm like, okay. Now, Somebody's bothering my baby. Then I talk to the student. All right, so and so, Johnny or Sarah.
Yeah.
What's my rule? They said, come find you and
You.
come tell you.
Yeah.
Then the parent would do this. Didn't this man come and tell you to come and tell him?
Yeah.
Yes. How come you didn't go tell him?
Yeah.
I don't know. Fred,
Yeah.
I had that happen 100 times to me, bro.
Yeah.
At least 100.
Yeah.
At least. So I eliminated. I wanted students to feel safe at school. Because as me, as a researcher, I know if your mind is not relaxed and your mind is not alert, you're not learning.
No.
If you're hungry, somebody's bullying you, somebody's punking you, if it's too cold, if it's anything, you're not going to learn. If you're not learning, my scores aren't going to look good. We're not going to look good.
So somebody has to care about the climate of the school at the highest level of responsibility, starting with the principal. Am I right? Is that what you're saying?
100%.
And
if the Cowboys lose tomorrow, whose fault is it?
Hey, it's that bad coach they got.
Or the good coach.
Yeah, I'm just tripping. I'm
Right.
back home in the ATL, so man, look, I can't say nothing about the Falcons, boy. Man, they need to revamp that whole organization, man. You know, but back to these kids though. What you've highlighted to me right there is that as a campus administrator and somebody that was responsible for the well-being and you were entrusted with the lives of your students, the lives of your teachers, the security of that campus, you made it known to any and everybody that, hey, if there was a problem, they need to let you know, because that was your way of taking responsibility. I'm not saying that didn't happen at Timberview, that the principal didn't, but we've got to do a better job. And when I say we, I mean the leaders on the campuses. They've got to do a much better job, man, really building some trust and rapport. And one of the things that I recall working so well for me, Dr. Johnson, was mentoring. I made it a requirement of myself